guys. Great to be here. And thank you very much for your time. As you can tell, I'm another Aussie over here from Sydney, Australia. And I've actually been busy yesterday. I've enjoyed all the presentations, and I'm Mick Badran, and you might have heard Kent. I had to go out and repair some things on a roof, and luckily I didn't slip and have to fill in a safety report. So what I'd like to talk to you today about in sort of a brief version, but catch me afterwards for a longer version, but talking about AI and bringing that into a particular part of industry, which in this case is healthcare. And it's great to see the developments around at the moment as we see, you know, the technologies progress and evolve, and, you know, the connectors and having better and easier experiences. When I first started, there wasn't any of this. So I sort of went back to looking at, you know, is it machine learning, and what are some of the models in machine learning and things like that. And also, as we've heard, you know, AI can make up things. So when you're talking about healthcare and somewhere, you know, the output is you've got nothing to worry about. How reliable is that? So for these critical decision-making processes and decision points, you obviously need extra sets of human eyes and the right experience and everything else over the top of all of this. So that's really important. I'm loving to be here. Love London. It's definitely recruitment weather. It's summer, so let's get cracking. And obviously, Logic Apps is the flavour of the month. Super easy, really, you know, visual. I come from sort of years of integration, and my therapist says that I'm doing well. I can talk about BizTalk now, and you know, it's I love it. And you know yourselves, when you talk about integration, you find yourself in so many different parts of technologies, whether it be devices, whether it be, you know, back-end solutions, Power BI analytics, and the rest of it. And so it's, you know, it's a great journey, and just embrace it and love what you do. And so in terms of, you know, being an MVP and things, I think this is my 20th year, and I just think the program gets better and better every year. It's amazing, it really is. So I'd just like to have a quick sort of who I am and what I'm doing. We're all sort of friends and family here now. So these are some of the people that inspire me in my life and keep me going, and basically I'm their full-time tech support. And then this here is my dog, the only person that really listens to me. And I actually enjoy a lot of ocean swimming. And, you know, I don't know whether it's a cliche or not, but Australian swimming. And so this here was not too long ago. I did a swim from Bondi Beach around to a place called Watson's Bay, out and around the heads, as they call it. And that's about a 10, 11 kilometre swim. And so that was significant for me. And just to share with you, the other week I was swimming, and if I held my arm out, a dolphin came by and swam with me for about 50 metres, like here. And the thing was, as it was approaching me, I was looking at it just going, is that one fin or two? Is it one fin or two? And it came like this. I thought, oh, here we go. I'm going to meet my maker. And then it just turns like this, and it's the dolphin. I'm like, oh, you've got no idea how many swimming costumes I need to change right now. Anyway, so what I'd like to talk to you about is just kind of where I came from in the last 4 years, and why we might want to sort of apply AI, and what I think about AI, how to sort of frame it, if you like, in conversations. And I thought Kent's previous session there was really good about that data sharing, and it's valuable, and what sort of role does AI play into it? Because is it the silver bullet? Does it, you know, does it have the answer to everything? And you know, certainly watch this space, because it is very, very, you know, busy. It's got a lot of interest. Even probably what I said that AI does and doesn't do this session will be gone in the next hour, as there's a new development, new model, whatever might come out. So In terms of healthcare, we built a solution around remote vitals capture. And then I just want to talk to you a little bit around some of the basics of AI. And then, you know, where I applied it, particularly in healthcare, and it's, it'll become a little bit more evident as to why I've done it. And then there's some demos, which pretty cool. We'll see it all happening. And then, you know, love to sort of hear from you, whether it be here, whether it be out in the corridors or later on, you know, when we get together. And for those of you online, welcome aboard. Great to have you on this session. For me in Sydney, Australia, that's how I tend to attend a lot of these sessions, and they're sort of 2, 3 in the morning. So I appreciate your effort wherever the camera is. So often we sit there and say, where do I start? You know, how do I go about this stuff? And my sort of suggestions are, let's start simple. Don't try and boil the ocean. Have some clear things. Just say, this is what we want to find out. And in the way of healthcare, what I started off with was really just augmenting what we were doing. Just add some nice stuff to it. And not really changing the underlying message as such. And the other side of it is, well, get out there, get looking at it, get viewing it, get working with it. And then, you know, start to see, you know, make these incremental improvements from I don't know why I had it plugged in. Make these incremental improvements. And then, you know, the other part to remember all of this is, I don't think anyone's sort of spoken about this. They are getting better, but a lot of the Azure services, you sort of fire up and you run and you go, okay, well, you don't really notice it. But then there's AI and you do. So if I'm going to be, you know, indexing 40,000 documents and bringing them in and then querying across that, it's not insignificant. So how are you going to do that? And what we're starting at the moment is really this, I want to know everything about everything. Sort of, you know, these large language models, and, you know, that's where I'm starting from. So is there a different paradigm that I can work with in this space? And then, so just in terms of a quick context, you know, I worked co-founded a healthcare startup, predominantly in aged care, and where access, you know, coming out of COVID and things like that, access to medical staff and healthcare professionals and things was limited. And being in Australia, there's a lot of space, so, you know, you could travel 200 kilometres to get to a doctor. So how do we kind of address some of these? And there's various, you know, doctor shortages, nurse shortages, and things like this. So that was really kind of the catalyst, the starting point. And one of the things that's particularly important in aged care is wound care. So if you've got a sore, how did it heal? When did it heal? Do you need antibiotics for it? So on and so forth. And so the solution evolved around these devices. These here particularly captured 13 different vitals, from blood pressure to ECG to looking down your throat and ears, and taking oxygenation and glucose and things like this. So there was a variety of different things that we had down here. And for those of you thinking, yes, the mobile device was the Bluetooth hub, and then these devices, I developed a sort of a layout that you could plug and play these type of devices in and change that. And then that ended up coming through to some sort of dashboard where you can see there that bits and pieces of these results. Don't worry about the actual numbers themselves, but apologies if it's a bit small up the back. But there were green, there were amber, there were sort of red, and these were values that fell within particular ranges for that individual. And then, so continuing on, there was, you know, going back to addressing that problem about, well, how do we get in front of the right people? So we had this sort of doctor-nurse family was an interesting one. If you've ever got anyone in or know, you know, people in aged care, being able to pick up a phone or pick up a tablet or whatever it is and saying, bang, I want to talk to my loved ones and things, pretty significant. And particularly that we couldn't visit them and things like this. So used Azure Communication Services, and then to make all that happen. And then there's also this other component around progress notes and what you talk about in meetings and being able to transcribe and read doctors' handwritings and nurses and so on. So there were some other cognitive services and things that were applied in that space as well. So it kind of looked a bit like this, or this is one of the earlier versions of it, that you've got different people around the screen and it's overlaid over the top with the last sort of details, medical details and things like that. The beauty about using, basing it through Azure Communication Services was I was able to use some of the other cognitive services and translation so that if the bizarre thing is the elderly just tend to revert back to their native tongue. So there were all these different languages spoken, and often, you had to have a translator for the doctor and things like this. And so through the cognitive services, I was able to translate that back from, Italian back to English, for example, and the doctor would speak in English and would be translated back to an Italian voice for that other person. They sounded like some rock star, but, it was the best I had at that time. All right. The middle screen's gone off. I don't know. Oh. Don't worry. We got this. I do this for comedic effect. Hang on. Oh, jeez. All right. Well, moving on. Okay. So, all right. People remember the first thing you tell them and the last thing you tell them, and they forget the things in between. I once did that to a friend of mine on stage. Okay, so in terms of AI, right, so this is the way I like to think of it over time. It's a bit like a calculator that we had, if you remember back, we had these sort of solar-powered things that were very, very basic, and everyone went, wow, this is the size of a credit card and it fits in my wallet and it's going to be the answer to everything. And then, you move on a little bit further and you had these, when I was at uni and things, we had these 42Ss, which was an advancement from the 32S, and it handled reverse Polish notation. And so when I look at AI, I look at it as another advancement of a calculator at this stage. So it's really good at some stuff. It's really good at summarizing. It's really good at translating and sort of keeping that context. And the models that we're using today are very much everything about everything. So I'd like to know everything about everything. And so, where is it going to go and what's it going to do, I don't know. But, strap yourself in and get ready for the ride. In terms of how to think of it, we've got these different models. So it's, y equals some function of x. And we talk about these models, and then there's some models that are really good at handling text. Some models are really good at sort of working with code and images and sounds and things. But and basically the way that they represent these things. Now, at last I looked just a moment ago before this session, there were over 1,693 different models that you could choose from. So which one are you going to pick? Why are you going to pick that one? How do you know if you picked the right one? So these are all practical questions, right? So there's things like, what's your training set of data? And then there's various things such as encoder to bring it back into that particular model's specifics. And then it looks a little bit like this in terms of the mechanics behind it. And so that's why picking the model is particularly important, and GPT, which you've heard about, has a wide application, and it tends to kind of work on a lot of things. But it's one of these large language models. And then what about if I'm doing something? How do I know if that model is accurate or not? And that's the other thing, apart from reading the text, right? And so I look at it and think, all right, well, if I'm building this out at the very beginning, it's a bit like making a cake. We're in the kitchen and we're trying all the things on all the shelves to figure out what that taste is and what's going to give us the best taste. And then we start to refine that, the ingredients and things. And then in the end, we're tweaking a very much smaller space. So if you think about applying AI to your websites or your solutions, by the time, let's say, Copilot gets to your website, it's a very finite set of functionality that you'd really like it to execute on and behave and actions and things like that. Because you don't want your customers to be able to ask it everything about everything. You want your customers to ask it something about, or anything about something, which is what you've refined it down into. So we sort of have this specialization in what we do when we start to work with AI. It's rare that you get all the way down, you put something on your website and you're talking about astronauts going, and NASA and everything else, unless you're a space program. So I always sort of start off with this 80-20 rule. Get there with 80, aim for that default scenario, 80% of the cases, aim for that. And sort of use the bits, just get in there, and because we can always play the what if game. So we can say, well, what about, on Wednesday when this happens, or if we've got an order and it's got, 5 other things and then it's been back ordered, and come on. So, start with the 80%, get something up and running, and that way you get the experience. So you're out in the field, you're playing the game, and you get that experience around, well, what's it going to look like? And then we've got things like small language models. So watch this space, because they don't need, when you're after anything about something, possibly a small language model could be your answer. And the reason why I'm excited about small language models is because the lights in my local suburb don't need to dim to run these things. You can run them on your phone, you can run them on laptops, and you would have been familiar with Intel, for example, their latest chipsets coming out that are running a lot of these AI workloads and things like that. So keep an eye out for that. In terms of where I applied AI into healthcare, so these vitals collections, for example, you collect blood pressure, and what I wanted was we'd have these reports and PDFs and things that would go back out, but I wanted a little bit more about it, in the sense of, well, if blood pressure is 120/80, for example, give me a little bit more about that. And so AI would go away and say, well, 120 is good, and talk about, arterial pressure and what. I thought, okay, that's pretty good. It's nice to have that in a report. And if you can imagine there's 13 of these that get such little descriptions, or if I've got 160 over 50 or something, it'll talk about what that means and so on. And often over time, what has been the hardest thing is, as these models evolve, and certainly the guardrails evolve, the hardest thing has been refining that prompt. Because 3 weeks ago it worked and now it doesn't, because it got hit by some, I can't talk about that filter. And so that was a challenge. And then I applied something else called text for analytics. Text analytics for health, which is a nice feature if you've seen it, if you've used it. It allows you to sort of pull out meaningful information from sentences in the way of medical sort of world. And then that was this report that I spoke about. And the solution looked a little bit like, and there's wound care in there as well, but the solution looked a little bit like this, where the mobile sent through various vitals through to IoT Hub, and that was sent up. So that was the out in the field bringing it in, and then once the results are coming in, then I could augment that process and get some extra information from whatever the flavour of AI was, and then bring that through using logic apps, create a PDF out of it, for example, send it. Keep it in that portal that you spoke about, that you saw a moment ago, and or the database. Now, I mentioned semantic kernel in here. I absolutely love that thing. And after you've done sort of several of these AI projects, you sort of sit there and go, hold on, this is quite fascinating. The only thing that's different in my last 3 projects are the prompts that I supply. And if you're looking at semantic kernel, that's quite, that's where I sort of saw that come to the surface. And then the next step is to take those prompts out from inside the code and keep it as configuration items. So prompts were things like bringing the data in, being able to query the source, the raw content. So in my case, I did have 40,000 documents that were contracts. They were written in Spanish. I had to move them over into English, collect the metadata on those, store that somewhere that was meaningful, and then be able to query that in the back end. And all of that was sort of 3 prompts with supporting code underneath. And then the next solution was those 3 prompts changed. And that was something totally different for graphic design and whatnot. So keep an eye out on that because it is really, really useful. All right, let me jump into a demo. And okay, so the first bit that I do just want to talk to you about there is that if you haven't heard of LM Studio, this is a good session for you. It's LM Studio allows you to work with these models locally. Go and grab it and work with it locally. The reason why, it's not necessarily going to give you the best performance, obviously, but if you're tinkering, if you're saying, I wonder what will happen if I do this, great, it doesn't cost you anything. You won't sort of rack up a bill somewhere. And there's a whole variety of different models and things like this. So this is running on my machine here. And, I can supply the whole sort of chat thing. I've got the temperature and various parameters. And I've also got some of the latest models such as Phi3 and things like that. So I can say, tell me about SpO2, for example, oxygenation level in your blood. And familiar experience, it'll go away and do that thing. So at the core of what we're doing, this is correct, right? As you're building out your solution, you say, wow, this is exactly what I want. Now the next steps are, how do you take that and then make it in the enterprise? So this is sort of the essence of what you need, and then you can wrap it with logic apps and the like and make that enterprise ready. So it's off doing its thing. The other thing too is just to remember about a lot of this stuff, we're familiar in integration with request response, and we want that pretty quick. A lot of this stuff isn't that quick. And I know it's all relative, but if you sit there, if you've designed a system and there's a button on a page and the user clicks it and you're expecting a result back like that, then you've got to do something else. And this is that anything about everything type question, as opposed to, can I use a vector database? Can I bring that back? Has the answer already been known? And then I can bring that back and just spit that already ready-made answer out. All right, let me jump into here. So in terms of, so this is where the other place I tend to start, which is, just either in OpenAI chat, just to work some things out. I can go through here and over here and say, give me some code if I want to do that as well. This is quite flexible in the sense of the way that I interact with this is quite flexible. And if I'm trying to figure out, is this model or that model, or have I got the prompts right, it's not a bad way to go. Now, the other side that I quite like is, your AI studio. So we move into the Microsoft world and they plug what we're missing in AI, in OpenAI, with a whole bunch of other services. And the part that I particularly get excited about is that there's a model catalog here, and this is, oh, there we go. There's our 1673, my mistake. So the part that we see through here is that this is the error conditions of all the different models, and we can filter this out. So if you're after text, if you're after audio, if you're after code, if you're after image processing, you can refine this and then look at where your error margins are and evaluate these. So it's not just one size fits all, but this is this, I'm going in and I'm having a little look and going deeper. But get out there and use one of the common models and get the mechanics working and get familiar with it. Okay, so in terms of text analytics for health, I've created something here ready-made, almost. And so I'll run this service, and I've got there which says 2 tablets twice a day of Panadol. And so down below, it'll come back with something of note that says, well, I've got the medication name, it's Panadol, I've got the frequency, it's twice a day. So we're starting to pull this stuff out. Imagine doctors and their doctor progress notes and prescriptions and things like this. I can also then, in Australia, we've got and I'm sure you know there's equivalent here as well, we've got a pharmaceutical benefit scheme, which is a whole list of all the drugs, what the side effects are and everything else. So I can go and pull that information, build a database about it, and start to build some intelligence around these queries so that I do know what the side effects are and it's coming from a trusted source. And I've just got sort of a query there, and there's a whole raft of information behind that, what the recommended retail price is, what the benefits price is, what so on. So that sort of added a whole lot of really good information, bolstered up what some of these results were. All right, so, and then when we move into logic apps, what I send into logic apps are observations, as it's called, and there's standards around this in terms of the medical world, and if I mention HL7 to you, there may be people, sort of shaking in the audience, yes. So there are a bunch of sort of standards, but simply put, what I did was just push to this particular workflow a whole raft of readings. So your blood pressure's this, your oxygenation level is that, and so on. And now the way that I went to call, the AI service is simply using an HTTP connector. And the reason for that is that the connectors weren't around for logic apps. But also, all right, that's a bit, okay, that's new. Also, I've got freeform sort of capability here around what I'd like to do to craft that particular request. And so as the models change, as my content changes and things like that, I've got there, I had to put in there, you're a journalist giving advice, because when I said you're a researcher, you're a doctor, it goes, no, I can't do that. And so I'm like, all right, well, how can I do it? You're a journalist giving advice. And so this is the logic app, and so I've got something in Postman where I've just got blood pressure, picture that, the mobile device has sent some stuff through, blood pressure, and we can change these parameters and things, but my time won't permit it. And I've also got oxygenation. So I'm then going to run it. And these are the things that the results here I would put into a report and produce a PDF over. So it's off running, and that was pretty good for request response. Now in this particular conversation, no one's waiting for it. It's a report that's going to be running. And then this is some of the information there that blood pressure reading of 160/80, and it goes on and talks about it. NHS, see, I don't get that when I'm in Australia, so it's kind of local, pretty good. But it's always, you've got to look at it. The hallucinations, and it's off with the fairies and whatnot, keep an eye on that. So that part of it is, you can appreciate where you'd take this and then put it into, the greater solution or somewhere else. And then, let me just have a look. Yeah, that's the response. And then that's the next part. Okay. Just about there, folks. All right, so the next part let me just hit next, there we go. So in terms of where I applied it next was wound care. So wound care is a particular area, and in a sense, so I looked at a whole raft of things. So vision, for example, vision services, and image classification and so on. And so as I was going down that path, to have an accurate sample set of training data, I needed 200,000 images of wounds, and then be able to classify those and say that's a good wound, that's a bad wound. And there's a whole raft of classifications around this of, is it red and is it raised, is it this, is it that, and so on. But what I did here was just go and take some images. These aren't mine, these are off the web. Take some images, I drew a circle around it and said, this one's healing nicely. Let me know about what the others look like to you. And so I've got I got some details back and I put that on. I know it's a bit small, but I'll show you that. Let me just see. I'll show you that right now. So just to go back to Studio. So I'm going back to AI Studio because I can plug in some vision type capabilities in here. And once again, doing this, it all, in the last 3 weeks, it almost made this irrelevant, but, it's fascinating. So what I'm going to do now is basically just upload that photo, and I'll say, tell me about the wounds with the circled one healing nicely. Now, hopefully, I haven't said that it's any kind of particular. There we go. Okay, so I won't sort of wait for it all, but it says the top right image is a large bruise, visible hematoma, suggesting, so it's reasonably good. It's not just, oh, that looks terrible, It's reasonably good. And it's not I'm not asking it the questions of, should I go and seek medical assistance or not? Right? It's about, give me a little bit more detail around, sort of what you see there, because it'll sort of pad it out a bit more. All right. Hang on, I just wanted to go back. Oh yeah. So the one part with all its the one part with all its wisdom, the AI can't give me the size of wounds. So if I have a wound, if I have a mark on an arm, it can't give me the size of it. So what I did was go away and apply what they do in the video world, and I used some of these video libraries for what I needed to do, and basically it's not the best, but the top left is the usual camera image, the normal camera. It is what we call edge detection. So what I needed to do was to find out where all the edges are on things, and then the one in the middle, this is an app that's running locally on my laptop, and the one in the middle is the one that applies both together. Now, when I sort of put objects up in front of it, it sort of, you can see it recognizing it and drawing lines around it. What I didn't bring with me was my little marker that gives it the sizing calibration. And if you've ever seen crash test dummies or things like that, they've got these little sort of markers on their shoulders and elbows and things. That I have, which is a known size. And what this does then is recognize that object in this picture. I know. Recognize that object in this picture, and then it'll say, right, well, the number of pixels is 5 centimeters long, and it'll give me a sizing of everything in this picture. So that gave me the size of wounds. Lastly, imagine if you could get access to this kind of stuff. And here is just in different forms and different ways. And this is just a stock standard Blazor website. I'm not a web developer, but what's running in the background is a Telegram bot. And what I've got here, I've started a chat up from my Telegram account, and it says, hopefully it's going to wake up and play the game. Or not. Well, that's a short demo, isn't it? Let me normally it's pretty quick. But anyway, if this doesn't work. Let's just... Yeah, okay. All right, but basically you could chat to that and it would give you back what we saw with that logic app. It runs a logic app in the background and gives you back, hey, you know, what about if my blood pressure is this or that or whatever. So just a slightly different way of interacting with all of this. And, you know, there's a lot more to it, but hopefully you can appreciate the power of it really and what you can do. So, you know, I look at it, AI like a calculator. If I'm a lawyer, for example, at the moment it won't say, give me my opening arguments. It'll give me, you know, this is what I found in paragraph 1, paragraph 2, etc. And then, you know, start simple. Just put one foot out there, because when you're out there doing it, you learn so much rather than sit back, because there's so many choices. Is the model right? What about fine tuning? There's a whole raft of things I haven't even mentioned. But do that 80%. What's the stock standard simple case that's going to work? And then you can refine it. And then, you know, certainly have fun. And I'll leave you with this, and that is, what did the Spanish firefighter call his 2 boys? Jose and Hose B. I know, you can take that home, that's fine, that's fine. So, thank you very much, folks, I appreciate it.